They're beautiful. I like having them.
Greetings, everyone. Your attention, please. Your attention. Oh, that sound works. Welcome to the first of our fall 2017 forums. I think we have 6 this semester. Of course, next spring as well. But every new year is a new round of interesting faces, e.g. Eva Schone, whom I bet everyone in this room knows you better than I do. But I'm going to just at least read this amazing biography. So Eva is a licensed practicing architect. She's a product designer as well, and lectured here. She's a lecturer at UT. She most recently led the undergraduate design studio, for which she developed a syllabus focusing on Bauhaus. She's also been a lecturer and guest critic at several universities, holds an M.Arch from University of South Florida. Used to have friends there who are worried.
It's a big storm.
Yeah, where's the University of South Florida?
Tampa.
In Tampa? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Eva is a recipient of the AIA Henry Adams Medal, the AIA Austin Emerging Professional Award. I don't know what the USF SACD is.
Oh, that's the School of Architecture at the
University of South Florida.
Yeah.
Okay. Distinguished Alumni Award, Austin Chamber of Commerce Innovative Practice Award. She has over a decade of work experience in award-winning practices of Carl Abbott and Tom Hurt, and she has completed built projects as Eva Schone Creative Studio. She's also the founder and creator of a product design firm. It's like Trophyology.
Yes, sir.
I think I went online and saw those beautiful things, which challenges the status quo of the award industry and has earned an international reputation for innovative design. Her work has been published in AIA Architect and in the Huffington Post. She's a dual citizen of Germany and the United States, and came of age in East Germany. And you say that informs what you do to this day.
Yes.
Hence Bauhaus.
There we go.
Yeah, right.
That's Bauhaus.
Welcome, Eva Schone. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here. It's really lovely to see you all. I'm going to try to speak up so you can continue snacking a bit. Let me know if you can't see or hear anything, okay? So thank you, Michael, for the kind introduction. I'm going to tell you, I grew up in East Germany when it was still East Germany. So we're getting actually to the point where the wall has been down longer than the wall was up. But it was an incredibly significant change in world history, really. And I grew up in the region of the Bauhaus, where the Bauhaus was, and about 2.5 hours from each of the 3 locations. And so I actually grew up with the spirit of the Bauhaus, maybe more so than most people can say so, since it was East Germany and a socialistic country with high design ambitions. So most people actually don't know that East Germany was highly interested in design and took a lot of the ideas from the Bauhaus. Unfortunately, they all got watered down a bit, but the initial impulse was from that. So I've always been interested in politics due to my own personal experience. I would have never guessed that I would ever live in the United States. Never ever, let alone be a citizen. And things can drastically change. I can attest to this. And today I'm going to share with you how incredibly impressive the Bauhaus was. Most people know about the Bauhaus, somewhat peripherally, really. And it is an incredibly broad topic. So I could talk about this, or we all could talk about this for days and weeks and months. It's really, really big. What I would love to do today is to give you a little bit of context, where the Bauhaus came from, how it evolved, what the political, humanistic, and also technological context was in which it evolved. And then I want to inspire you. I want you all to leave here and be really, really, really inspired, because, you know, every time I open a book, I'm walking away and thinking, holy smokes, this is incredible. So, and then I would love to have a little conversation with you all at the end and also hear what you know about it. And I see some former students who I know much more than half a year ago. So I think there's probably a lot of knowledge in the room, and it would be great if we can have a little chat about it. So, the Bauhaus, unbelievably, only existed for 14 years. Just think about that, 14 years, and everybody has heard about it. And it existed in 3 different locations in those 14 years. That in itself is incredible, that an institution could have moved and be successful within a span of 14 years. This is a map of Germany, of the United Germany now, and this was East Germany. Just to give you a sense, we had about 8 million people in East Germany, and the Bauhaus was, the original location was in Weimar, then it moved to Dessau, and then it moved to Berlin. And the Bauhaus was formed in 1919, which is right after World War II. So I'm going to set the stage here. World War I. Pardon, yes. So World War I broke out in 1914 and lasted for 5 years until 1918. The Russian Revolution happened in 1917. The Treaty of Versailles formally ended World War I in 1919. This was the beginning of the Weimar Republic, which was the statehood of Germany in that time. Here in the United States, in that time, female suffrage came to rise, Prohibition happened, and Theodore Roosevelt was president, and then it was handed over to Woodrow Wilson for obvious reasons. On a humanistic end, and this is really important, these are all really, really important aspects that were brand new, that we all take for granted these days, but they were new concepts. So the origin of species, the concept of the unconscious, theory of relativity, this shook people up. Right? Their whole belief system, how they understood their worldview, was really shaken up by these humanistic advancements. And it was not an easy transition. We look at it back now and we look at these dates, but this is years and years and years and decades really of moving through these transitions and people starting to understand and wrap their head around what that really means for their own life, for their own belief system, and what it means, the role of God. And this is a really interesting aspect as we talk about modernism. It's a very important aspect. Secondly, this is more technological, these 3 points. First Kodak camera, first X-rays, first radio transmission, but they're somewhat ethereal. And so I put them more on this slide. On a technological end, here in the US, the first transcontinental railroad was built. First train drive bike came into being, Ford's Model T, and this is all kind of, we're putting a few decades together, okay? The arts and crafts movement came to an end, slowly, and first all-metal commercial airplanes were deployed, and Great Britain was the leader of the industrial world. And in the United States, it was called either the Second Industrial Revolution or the Great American Industrial Revolution. So Great Britain and America, or the United States, were the leaders of that movement. Germany, not so much at all. And when we think of Germany, right, now and then, that is kind of unbelievable. They were known for shoddy and kitschy work. So, we are now in a shift. Well, let me say this. Industrialization marked the shift from craft production to mass production. Currently, we are in a shift from mass production to mass customization. Everything we do with 3D modeling, 3D printing, all of that is part of mass customization. And so we're basically now in a huge paradigm shift. We're all probably not quite aware of it, what that really means. And in 100 years, people might look back at this time right now and say, oh my God, this is the time when it happened. And we're talking decades, right? It's a slow process. And this is where they were, where they're shifting from craft production, meaning people working in homes primarily, making one-by-one pieces, and then moving to mass production, where unskilled labor was able to produce at a high frequency, fairly well-built products. That was the whole point. So what that looked like was this. Another thing that was really just happening was that child labor was a huge issue in the Industrial Revolution. The whole idea of communism came, actually, a lot of it came out of people saying, look, you can't keep people like this. Marx, Engels, they all wrote based on working conditions of people, and a lot of them were children. So child labor was really not that long ago that it was outlawed. And it was a real long process too. It took decades for it to really be gone. And it's the first time in the 1850s where early childhood education becomes a thing. Nobody ever thought about educating small kids, really. The things I read were like, well, if they made it through the age of 4, good for them, right? I mean, kids died a lot. And if they made it to the age of 4, then maybe they started by 8 or 9. If they got lucky, they got some education, or they just went on and worked. So the concept of childhood education is also really not that new if we look at the span of history. The leaders of this were Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi, huge name, Swiss educator, and then Friedrich FROEBEL stepped in, or was a disciple of Pestalozzi, and started kindergarten. He's the first person to start kindergarten where they educated small children. So I'm going to read this because this is important. Pestalozzi believed that education should develop the powers of head, heart, and hands. Really beautiful, right? So kindergarten, first one started in 1837, and it spread fairly quickly throughout the world. And FROEBEL came up with these gifts. These were the educational tools he developed. And you may have heard of it. I most certainly was educated with them in kindergarten.
Just give me a second.
And so he had several gifts. They were all numbered, and they all had different functions. And they were to help children understand the universe. So they were actually really thinking about, who are we in space? Who are we in this time? How can we educate children in a playful manner that makes them understand this world that we're part of? So FROEBEL is also somebody who's incredibly fascinating. He was also, you could put him in the woo-woo category if you wanted to. He was very much into, I can't think of the word now. Can somebody help me? Readings and crystals and things like of that nature. Can somebody help me with that? With the
Mystical?
Pardon?
Mystical?
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you. Okay, replace woo-woo with mystical. So part of the FROEBEL gift were also these colored papers. And this is all work from, 4 and 5-year-olds. Pretty incredible, right? If you look at it. They're actually, if you read up on kindergarten education, they put these next to Mondrian paintings and so on to show the comparison, right? So beautiful work. I remember doing these, weaving with papers. Like, anybody else in the room? Yeah? Okay. So, and then I find this like the most fascinating. And my voice might go up because I'm so excited about it. But a lot of these FROEBEL gifts were done on a grid table. So these kids were sitting on a table with grids on them. And if you don't, I mean, that shapes your worldview, right? And it has an end, and then it doesn't have an end, and so all these kids have great pictures of 10, 12 children sitting on these tables, like similar to this, and they all have grids on them. I'm just super excited about that. And they still make them just like that. So these are modern pictures. So kids play on these grid tables. What I find interesting is look, no boundary, right? Don't know how I feel about that edge, but and now look who went to kindergarten. Frank Lloyd Wright, Albert Einstein, Le Corbusier, Buckminster Fuller. There's even a story that they say that he did his first geodesic dome in kindergarten with these gifts. Right? Remember those sticks that you just saw? They were supposed to make a little square and he couldn't do it, so he came up with this other shape. And legend has it, we don't know if it's true, but they're saying the kindergarten teachers were super fascinated and like, holy cow, look at this. It stands up. Vasily Kandinsky went to kindergarten in Florence. So like I said, it spread quickly. And then Piet Mondrian was educated as a primary school teacher. And so was Johannes Itten. Please keep the name Johannes Itten, Vasily Kandinsky, those particular in mind for the Bauhaus. So all of these were touched by FROEBEL and his teachings and his ideas about how to educate children. Interestingly enough, Frank Lloyd Wright's son developed the Lincoln Logs. Just saying. Okay, so let's go visit back to Germany, Kitsch and Shoddy. So here's the thing that I want to go back to. I'm going to really inspire you. I'm going to use Tony Robbins, right, the master of inspiration and motivation. What do we do when we want to change something? We set an intention, right? We make a plan, and then Tony Robbins says, follow it by massive action. So, intention, plan, and massive action. Those are really the things to bring about change. Well, Germany did that. And we all know how well they did, right? So, one of the great things about Germany is that it values its creatives to this day. When Germany has had a problem, World War I ruined Germany. They just finished paying reparations to France in 2007 for World War I. Think about that. That's crazy, right? Housing was destroyed. So Germany has always looked to their creatives and said, help us. So they set the intention, we don't want to be known for shoddy and kitschy. We want to be there with Great Britain and the USA. So they formed the Deutsche Werkbund. There will be a quiz at the end, all the German words. And actually, one of the tips that I just want to give you, when you read German words, just say them softly, and it will sound so much more German. And when people always have this tendency to bark German, because that's them. Deutscher Werkbund. See how easy that was? Everybody say it with me once. Deutscher Werkbund. Beautiful. So they formed a professional association, the Deutsche Werkbund, and it was artists, architects, designers, and industrialists. So they were friends, people respected each other and looked to each other. It was a state-supported effort to integrate traditional crafts into industrial mass production. And the members were trying, I love this phrase, they were trying to focus the overall level of taste in Germany. And what a beautiful thing, right? And how did they do this? By improving the design of the everyday objects. Also totally mind-blowing, right? So if we look, even in the United States, since I have been here, I've lived in the United States for 19 years. If I just look back at Target, when they introduced Michael Graves designs, it changed people. It changed them. It was affordable. They started looking at it. So it really does make a difference. A very effective way to change general attitudes and general understandings is the everyday object. So the other really remarkable thing about their Deutscher Werkbund is that it had several foreign members. So here we are, it's a state-sponsored Deutsche, the German Werkbund, but they invited several foreign members. And one of them was Henry van der Velde. We'll come back to him. One of them was father of Aerosarin. So, and one of them was Peter Behrens, who is so influential. Who knows about Peter Behrens? Anybody? Okay, some people. Good. So there were about 14 members, founding members, and these three I'm going to pull out and just, actually these two we're going to talk about. So the Werkbund built a theater in Cologne. And they gave the commission to the Belgian man, which is, it's just remarkable. That wouldn't really happen these days, right? It's like, they wouldn't do that, but they gave it to him. So it's a big Art Nouveau building. This was the predominant style of architecture at the time. It was Art Nouveau. And just so you know, Art Nouveau, Beaux-Arts, Jugendstil, it's all the same. Okay, it's different words for the same thing. And here's Peter Behrens. So before Germany, before World War I, Germany was like the United States, a collection of 16 states. And they had dukes as rulers. And those dukes also went to the creatives and said, I want you to be my advisor. Be my advisor. So Peter Behrens was actually an advisor to AEG. Oh, well, let me go back. AEG was a large electrical company, Allgemeine Elektriker Gemeinschaft, so electrical company. And they brought him on board to design all the products and to advise on all the branding. So he is the first kind of industrial designer that people recognize. So he designed the logo, products, type, everything. He actually designed a Behrens font that is said to be on the Reichstag in Germany. So I need to confirm that, but I read that a couple of times. I just need to find a source of it to make sure it's correct. And he became, in 1903, the director of the Arts and Crafts School in Düsseldorf, which was in West Germany. So this is also kind of a remarkable thing, that there are all these different arts and crafts schools. And how remarkable that the Bauhaus is the one that made it, right? So here's a super talented guy who led this, made a lot of reform in this arts and crafts school. And they were all appointed by these dukes still. So, okay. And these are some of the products he designed. And this is 1908, 1910. Electric kettle, table fan, and lights. And you probably have all seen this building at some point, right? This is generally hailed as one of the first modern buildings due to the curtain wall. So this is the Turbinenfabrik in Berlin by Peter Behrens. And I'm going to show you the interior because we never see the interior. So really interesting construction. And hey, look who works in Peter Behrens' office. All these guys. Mies van der Rohe, Adolf Meyer, Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius. Mies van der Rohe actually never had formal architectural education. So Walter Gropius, his dad was an architect. He went to architecture school. Mies van der Rohe, not so much. And Mies van der Rohe's name was actually Ludwig Mies. And he decided to become a little bit more, presentable. So he added the Van der Rohe to it. Took a little liberty there.
So it's a Corbusier.
Yeah, right. But so in Germany, it's really a funny little side note. In Germany, when you say, this is Dutch, that V-A-N is Dutch. In Germany, it's V-O-N. if you ever see a German with the VON, it means that they are like of regal descent. So you cannot just take that in Germany. The Dutch are a little loosey-goosey about it. So he went with the Dutch version, which is kind of funny, you know. And it worked for him, really did. So, and then Walter Gropius and Adolf Meyer, so they got to know each other in Peter Behrens' office, and then they got this commission to design this factory. And please note, these are all Industrial Revolution buildings, right? This is the heyday of Industrial Revolution. So they designed this factory, and this is truly, look at the corner, right? This is super important in architecture, in the development of modern architecture. It's still looking real good to this day. It's a UNESCO heritage site, so it's the AEG turbine factory. So let's go back. So we have Henry van de Velde. We have Walter Gropius. Focus on those two. Peter Behrens, great guy. Put him aside. Okay, he basically helped everybody come up. He's the father of them all in a way. So Henry van de Velde was invited to be part of the Deutsche Werkbund. So now, just 10 years later, the sentiments in Germany start to shift. So he becomes, before that though, he goes to Weimar, and Weimar was it's the intellectual home of Germany. Goethe, Schiller, they all went to Weimar, so it was a very important city. And he went there, and the Grand Duke of Saxon-Weimar hired him and brought him on and said, here, we have this arts and crafts school, can you please lead this? So he builds this new building. This is the Arts and Crafts School in Weimar. Built it in 1905. And then things start to shift in Germany. Like, people become more homophobic, and he's like, he was not allowed to stay. So he actually moved away and had to leave that position. So he was doing very well. Had actually combined already the School of Arts and Crafts and the Academy of Fine Arts. Both of these schools were in Weimar, and he had already started to combine them and make reforms in that. But then he had to leave because, like I said, sentiments are shifting. And he had to recommend 3 people to take the position. One of them was Walter Gropius. And he got the gig. So this is how Walter Gropius came to be the founder of the Bauhaus. So he renames this combined school and calls it Bauhaus. And this building is the first Bauhaus in Weimar. Okay? So it's never really, sometimes I'm always curious, I'm like, how did this happen? You know, because one of the main things that I've seen going through this change from East Germany to West Germany was nothing happens overnight. Well, with the exception of the wall falling, that really did happen overnight. But it took years leading up to it, and it was years after it for the transition to be complete. It was 10 shitty years, let me just say it, okay? And East Germany has never been the same. Still 30% unemployment rate, and so on. Most young people left. If you had any ambition, you had to leave. So it's an empty space right now. So transitions like this don't happen easy. Whenever I see a revolution anywhere in the world happen, I'm like, oh my God, hang tight. It's going to be rough for decades, really. And yet I'm really proud of East Germany that it changed the world, and it's maybe the only revolution that happened peacefully. So it's really remarkable. So here we are. Now the Bauhaus is founded. Walter Gropius comes on board. This is 1919. I have to go back to World War I. Most of the people associated with the Bauhaus have served in World War I. Walter Gropius was a sergeant. He almost died. You know, most of his team died. This was a rough time. 18 million people died. 22 million people were severely injured. The scope of this is just unfathomable, and World War II was even worse. You know, it's like 60 million people. I mean, ridiculous numbers. But I'm saying this because it's really important to know where they're coming from. They weren't just, making beautiful things. They had just gone through probably the most traumatic thing that anybody can go through. And I feel like right now is a pretty shifty time for all of us, right? I feel pretty unsettled, and it's nothing compared to what they go through or went through. So, so they come in and they're motivated. They're inspired. They made it through the end of World War I. And they're like, we have to come up with something better. This has to improve, whatever it is. And they lost faith in humanity, right? I mean, if you see the war machine, you have to find the humanity back in your hope and dreams and all of that. And they were going to do it through their work. So Walter Gropius invited several people that he knew to come to him with him to the Bauhaus. Lionel Feiner was one of them, an American, who also lived in Germany partially. And they wrote this manifesto. And Lionel Feiner did the cut of it for the cover of his manifesto. This was printed as a booklet. And it's a woodcut, and it's symbolizing, I don't know if you can see it, but it's showing some of the old cathedral-like shapes. It has these three tenets. They stand for architecture, sculpture, and painting. And this is a little bit based on the old craft huts of the Middle Ages, really. When they built these big cathedrals, how they passed on knowledge. All of this came into play here. And so, what he says, yes.
You're halfway through. Are you
okay.
halfway? It's very beautiful.
Is it?
It's 11:30.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to speed up. Okay.
That was very beautiful.
But thank you. I appreciate that a lot, actually. Okay. So what they're saying is everything is the complete building. All the arts is in service of the complete building. So I'm going to speed up here, okay, because I want to show you a lot more. So he writes this manifesto, and they invite everybody to come. It was open to women, men, everybody. And people showed up. And a lot of women showed up. And they were a little bit taken aback how many women showed up. But this is, here, let's say it all together. Softly, Gesamtkunstwerk. Okay, one more. Gesamtkunstwerk.
We have an advantage.
This is basically holistic work of art. And it's coming from this idea that everything needs to work together. We're not just building, we're not just painting, we're not just sculpting. It's all together in the service of building. Okay, so Gunther Stürzer was one of the females that showed up, and she writes, at the founding party of the Bauhaus, we were all carried away by it, and then came the serious works from Gropius. We are faced with a vacuum. It has to be filled, it has to be built, and every hand is needed. Don't shrink from chaos, but take from it things that seem to use and represent life and give shape to them. So I think this is really important, and this is like a 19-year-old writing this too, right? This is kind of remarkable on the eve of that. So they were serious about replacing this chaos that they had just come out of. And so everything was new. It was new living, new building, new seeing, new objectivity, which is a term you probably know a lot. New man, new world. And here's Walter Gropius. I'm going to show you work. I'm going to show you work now, very fast, okay? That happened within those 14 years. So I'm not showing anything before, I'm not showing anything after those 14 years of the Bauhaus, even though there's a significant amount of work. So this was a competition entry from 1922. If I look at downtown Austin, it seems like, not that far away, right? I want you to look at this and understand, this is 100 years ago, okay? This is really significant. This was his office in Weimar. Look at that. It's beautiful. Everything was designed by them. This was the graphic of it. And everything was based on a cube in this office, just so you know. These were the chairs designed for this office, still in production. Marcel Breuer, hugely influential. He was a student at first at the Bauhaus, then became a professor. We all know the Vasily chair. And this was his bicycle. And all of this bent steel furniture comes from this bicycle, from the handlebars. That's where he had the inspiration. And he contacted them, the bicycle company, and they said, no, we don't want to work with you. So he went straight to the factory and said, okay, help me make this. And they did. Look at the sizing, right? He continued on with these nesting tables, still in production. Here's a little copyright conflict. Marchstorm won, by the way, legally, but most of it is actually attributed to Marcel Breuer. And the legend goes that this guy, when they had designed this, they flipped it on its side and was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if you could sit on it? So go back, see? This is all Marcel Breuer. And I don't know if you can see it, but they had this really beautiful zingier for the Bauhaus. And this is all derivatives of the bent steel. Gunther Stürzel, weaver. So the Bauhaus, this is actually a whole different discussion. All the females, they were, like I said, were a little shocked how many showed up. And unfortunately, they all put them in the weaving workshop.
Ah.
Very few made it out of there. So that is probably my biggest pet peeve with the Bauhaus. So she designed all these wall hangings. Oops, sorry. Here are the weavers on the stair. And then Oskar Schlemmer painted it. And then look, I'm throwing this in, Roy Lichtenstein painted that in the 80s. Here are all the ladies weaving. Benita Koch-Otte is somebody who we don't really hear much about, also a weaver. Oh, and it says Teppich for Kinderzimmer, right? Children's room. These are drawings, these are studies. I feel like this could be straight from Pinterest right now. Annie and Josef Albers came together to the Bauhaus. And Josef Albers is of course known for his color theories and musings, but he also designed objects. He's also famous for his stained glass. In fact, he taught that. And the Sommerfeld residence was one of the first Gesamtkunstwerks that the Bauhaus produced. And this is the stained glass window he designed for it. And this is the Sommerfeld house. Now you might see some reference to Frank Lloyd Wright in this. Yeah. So they all knew of each other and influenced each other. And then they designed products. And the Bauhaus, it was perceived as left-leaning in the community. And one of the ways to control that by the more right-leaning city government was to get the funding less and less. And this is also, I want you to remember this, these guys were ingenious. Whenever they ran against the wall, they pivoted and just did something else. So they designed products for students and they licensed them. So they then went to manufacturers and said, hey, do you want to make this? Little problem was that it was too far ahead for its time, so it didn't have huge commercial success in the beginning. But just the fact that they founded a company and licensed the designs and went about it, that is incredible. And again, 14 years. Right? Beautiful work. So, some of their toys were most successful. And everything was designed, signes, everything. Wallpaper was a bestseller in their book. Wilhelm Wagenfeld, very influential product designer. We all know the Bauhaus lamp, right? This is how my father cooks his eggs. It's true. I mean, all of this is still in production, right? And here's Marianne Brand. She comes where I come from, city that I'm from.
Which cities?
well, at the time when I grew up, it was Karl-Marx City, but it is now Chemnitz again. And when she was there, it was Chemnitz. Never heard of her. So here's the thing: in East Germany, Bauhaus was not talked about. They used all of it, and you looked around, and it was everywhere, and it was standardized, and you had 3 options, and you picked one. That's how East Germany rolled, but never ever was there any discussion about it. And Marianne Brandt died very unremarkably in East Germany. Hugely influential designer with her metalwork. She's the only woman who made it into the metal workshop. And you've seen this. And look, if you go to Ford Standard now, anybody know Ford Standard, product design company? That's the detail they use that they're known for 100 years ago. This is when we still designed ashtrays. We did ashtrays in kindergarten. We got a giggle out of that recently.
I think I made an ashtray.
Right? Yeah. We all did. Yeah.
Clay.
Yeah.
My parents didn't even smoke.
She designed all these lamps. Look at this. This is still stuff we spec every day. All of us still go about designing or specing these Bauhaus pieces. This is the lighting in the Bauhaus in Dessau. So they moved and they closed down the Bauhaus. They struggled the funding, strangled the funding. So the Bauhaus people, everybody got together and said, "We're closing down. You will not close it. We're leaving." And then they had an exhibition in 1923 that was so successful and spread the word so much that several cities in Germany said, "Hey, we want to host you." And then Dessau was the city that won that. So that's when they moved to Dessau. They built this building. Max Krajewski, never hear about him really, but he designed these lights. And look how awesome they are. How in different ways they can be deployed. And if you go to South Congress Hotel and you look up, right, pretty much like this. Oskar Schlemmer, my God, I adore him so much. Look at this. This is 1907. He did a ballet and he did all the costumes for it. And they all performed it. Like Vasily Kandinsky is in this picture. If you ever have a chance to see this, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's like half an hour long. They reenacted it, or these are images from a reenactment from the 70s. It's gorgeous. So the city where I grew up in was very famous for stage design, and this is kind of the stage design. When I went to the theater, which I went a lot, my high school was right next, so I would go almost every day. That's the stuff that I grew up with in terms of aesthetic and theater. That's the Signé. The Bauhaus is hugely influential in graphic design. Herbert Bayer. Hannes Meyer, second person to lead the Bauhaus after Walter Gropius. Very short-lived. This is the work he fabricated and in that time during the Bauhaus. Mies van der Rohe was the third leader of the Bauhaus. The Barcelona Pavilion happened during the Bauhaus years. All of this furniture during the Bauhaus years. He worked with Lily Reich. She was one of the few female students. Never really hear about her in the context of this, but she worked on all the interiors with him. Villa Tugendhat during Bauhaus years. This was in the Czech Republic. Mies van der Rohe curated the Weissenhofsiedlung exhibit. This was an exhibit and several architects contributed to it. So this is all while they're facing huge difficulties, no money, they got haunted politically, they're trying to stay apolitical, and they have life going on too, they have affairs, they have all this stuff, it's super fascinating, really.
Affairs, yeah.
They take a lot of time.
Well, did you know that Walter Gropius married Gustav Mahler's wife?
Yeah.
You knew that? I did not know. I just recently learned that. I almost forgot. Oh my God, that's
It goes
so
on
weird.
and on.
Yeah. Well, he was founding the Bauhaus, mind you. So, this is the building in Dessau. This is 1925, and they built this within a year. And this is remarkable. It's not like this was known construction technique. This is, this was Art Nouveau. This, everybody was doing completely different things. They also completely reinvented project management, how construction sites are run, all of that. It's still in existence today, and I highly encourage any trip to Europe, including this. It's really, really lovely. You can even stay in one of these. These are the dorms for the students. There's the Vasily chair. Maria in the Brandkleiding. And then also the Bauhaus is, we're not even touching this. It's hugely influential in color theory, in color deployment and interiors. Herbert Bayer, Heinrich Schäper, very important for that. And this is what it looks like. These were the workshops. That big stretch of building with a big curtain wall, those were all workshops. They also designed homes for the masters, which are incredibly influential for residential construction and design, and also interior design. If you ever get a chance to see those. And here they are. There were only about 35 faculty in those 14 years. They had about 1,250 students. Gunther, only one, only female. And this is very important. There was and is no Bauhaus style. It was an idea. It was not so much about the visuals, it was about an idea. And so today we're here, and I'm going to run through this very quick. Iris van Herpen looks pretty much like Oskar Schone. It's a reference there. Neri Oxman's work. So this is where we're now. If these guys would have lived, or would live now, they would all be all over this transition. And the grid. So I think this is also, I'm wondering about what does all the video gaming and all of this perception of how our world is evolving, what is that doing to our children now? How are they perceiving the world, right? From that flat grid table to this. And it's all moving, we're moving. So here, I love this image so much because it's a traditional grid of bamboo building this, skewed grid. So we are in this other world now. And I'm going to end with him. And this is his theory of relativity that he started wrote in 1905, and it was proven in 1919 during the solar eclipse. And he if you look at that, right, he's so far ahead of the curve. So there we go. You want to chat about this? Do you guys have any questions? Yes.
Are you writing? Can we read some things you've published? Can you tell us some things you have published?
Oh, I'm not there yet. I would love to, but I'm still in my research phase.
How about online or blog or something?
Yeah, I would love that. I'm just, thank you for the encouragement. I'm flattered. Yeah.
It's interesting that you insist that Bauhaus is not a style or a look or whatever, but is an idea. I'm just wondering about if ideas actually don't end up being styles. Like, what does it mean to resist that it's a style or a look or a color choice?
Yeah.
Or a material choice and saying it's an idea? I'm just interested in that what effect that statement has or intends, and whether that's true to our experience of it.
Yeah, it's a very good point. So I want to clarify, it's not me saying that, that's actually them saying that, the Bauhausers. But it's a very good point, and I want to noodle on that a little bit. Because you're right, I mean, this is a clearly identifiable...
It's a look.
It's a look, yeah. Yeah, and it has shaped us so much, right? Our work. Has anybody ever used the Bauhaus as a reference in a presentation, like when you work?
Who hasn't?
Who hasn't,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, in so many ways.
Eva, thank you. It was a beautiful presentation. Stuff I knew and didn't know. When I see this, and like I like the way you presented it. I have some wonders about the jump to the current ways of fabricating.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's always so striking to me about the Bauhaus is the integration of art and craft. You know, that it was fundamental, and particularly in light of, shall we say, like our university's fine art department getting rid of craft. You know, the current trend is separating craft and art. I just wonder if you want to make the case for this jump that you're making about art and craft and the new technologies and ways of making, like how craft is interwoven in that.
Yeah, I love that question. So I am actually, just warming up myself to this whole shift in fabrication. I have to tell you. So I quit my architecture's job to form a craft company, right? Trophyology, we handcraft every piece.
Yeah,
So,
beautiful
and thank you. And part of it was that my creativity was going down because I was on the computer all the time. And I could feel myself just, I couldn't do it. So I personally need my hands and I need materials. I am a super tactile person to make things. That's very important. And I think as a human experience, it's very important to all of us that we keep that aspect alive. However, I'm also very fascinated, and I'm just kind of like I said, I'm warming up to it. I'm fascinated what it's going to do to our environment. So I'm super curious myself, actually,
I guess I was thinking that, I think craft and making are not the same thing, right? I think, in fact, just making without craft is one kind of thing. But nor is it, I think, craft necessarily about making things by hand. So I think there's a jump in there that you can do. I think it's a kind of key question to how you engage new ways of fabrication while engaging issues of craft, which is something the Bauhaus I think did incredibly well.
It's like there's like this whole discussion whether all this digital fabrication is craft or not, right? Because if you think about it, if you look at the feedback that you get from what the hand does, and that's kind of a two-way process. I mean, I struggle with that too. Is it craft? Is it craft? Just designing something on the computer and 3D printing it?
But I think there's for me, it doesn't necessarily have to do with the hand. Like I have no problem taking the hand out of things, but I think like there's that beautiful book by Pi, The Nature and Art of Workmanship, or something. Like the way, I think one of the things that's so interesting about this work or about traditional crafts or crafts like the way you make your beautiful trophies is that the way in which it's made has added something inherently compelling to the artifact. Not just that it's a shape, right? And it's one of the things that I think is so interesting about the Bauhaus and all of those things, from the weaving to the, artifacts to the buildings. And but I feel like if you're going to make that jump from the way you continued your very beautiful presentation from the Bauhaus to just jumping into to these other things, I think you have to actually make the leap personally to do with craft.
Much more slowly.
Yeah.
Well, but to do with how making is.
Let's end the discussion. These are great things, but come on, guys. Let's hear from some
Well,
students.
I always think of craft as
Mel's a student.
there's an element of
Student of life.
No, Mel, you are.
finish quick, but I think of it as a qualitative nature.
Yeah.
So whether it comes from the hand or a machine, as long as the machine is programmed to produce and finesse to produce something that's of high quality, that's valid too. We're just used to it in the past being handcrafted was the way it was. You got that, but I think of the whole qualitative issue of craft is something achievable. And about that quickly about the other thing, you talked about the idea versus the style. It seems like that it's important to think of things as an idea because it leaves you can go anywhere with it and everybody can interpret it in much broader terms rather than thinking of the style. But I think a style is a derivative filtration of the idea or a school of ideas sometimes that gain popularity and then they filter themselves into what why
But
people are.
my only argument would be,
Interesting.
I get that, but my only would be that in real life, we learn style before we learn the idea. And that, so it's like,
That's probably a problem.
no, I think that's probably how you get it.
Oh,
That
really?
the transmission occurs through basically copying or getting the feel of a style. It's like you learn theory of dance after you've danced it, or you learn grammar after you were speaking. Like you can't transmit
Well, that's
the
true.
idea. You actually have to do it, and in the doing, the idea gets into you. Like that, the transmission is through imitation and through style.
Yeah, but I think it's also like there's a hard work component of it too. Like
Yeah, you
just
get the repetition.
just engaging the style, like you maintain things at a superficial level. I mean, that's part of the nature of style, right? It's
I don't know.
understanding things at
I don't know if I believe that.
I mean, I'm not talking about stylishness. I'm talking about when
Yeah.
you're talking, which is I think a different issue entirely.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you're talking about like something as a style,
Yeah.
you're generally trying to find a way to kind of quantify it
Yeah,
formally.
we're trying to put it down.
Well, I don't think so. Only in architecture is style putting things down.
Yeah,
Like in
it's
other
style.
things, style is like it's often a kind of increase. But
Yeah.
I think like it's generally a way to quantify formally something.
Mm-hmm.
But then the process. I agree with you that you try it on. But then I think there's this kind of way of metabolizing something that makes you go to the ideas underneath it. Like I was telling you recently about like the way the Museum of Modern Art quantified or categorized modernism in the international style as a style and stripped it of all the social programs that came from Europe and the sort of left-leaning stuff and then it was understood that way and generally not always but often kind of just stayed as a look. And I think there's a missing step there is all I'm saying.
What I love about this is that that's the same conversation these guys had at the
I'm
Bauhaus.
sure.
There, people left the Bauhaus because they were like, no, we need more hand, and then they're like, no, we need more technology, we need more this and that. It's a very Bauhaus discussion. Anybody else?
Get some
Any
students
thoughts?
before we close this up.
Yeah. Come on, guys.
Yes.
It'd be interesting to engage more with the concept of economy as you start to frame this discussion, because I think in this current context, like we are still very much like grappling with the same discussion. Like it might be too much of a jump to say this sort of like mass customization, because I would say we're just like hyper mass production now, and there's this very small niche like blip on the radar of people that have the economy to customize and to
Right.
deviate from that path. And I think as we're framing that in the current sort of contemporary context, and then looking back at Bauhaus, and you sort of scrape the surface, at least talking about obviously a very different political and economic context in East Germany, how they operated in that space and how they managed to sort of like scrap and make their way and do the things they need to do. I think it was like for me it seemed like a clear theme or a system to help frame the question, but it wasn't directly sort of integrated into the discussion.
It's so much really. It's such a, you can take it in so many directions, but I love that. And let me just tell you, East Germany did not do it very well. And it's just not, you can never do anything well without enough resources. It's just, you need them, And East Germany didn't have them. So everything that's started out as a really good idea, oh my God, people hated those places that they ended up building,
Guys, I'm gonna close it, say thank you, Eva, but as you all know, this discussion goes on. But the students have to get to class. If there's 6, 10, 15, 20 people, stick around for another 20 minutes at least, all right? So Eva, thank you for a great response.